I'll now call to order this Monday, January 29th, 2024 regular council meeting. Please note that this meeting is being broadcast live and recorded to be available on the City of Armstrong's YouTube channel. Firstly, we'd like to respectfully acknowledge that the land on which we are gathered is the unceded ancestral territory of the Silks, Okanagan peoples, and the Splatsin of the Secwepemc Nation. Moving forward, we'll be calling for the adoption of the agenda. I'm looking for a motion that the January 29th, 2024 agenda for the regular council meeting be adopted. Do I have a mover? Councillor Drapoulos, second. Councillor Wayner, thank you. All those in favor? That will be carried unanimously. And looking for an adoption of the minutes, looking for a motion that the January 8th, 2024 minutes of the City of Armstrong regular council meeting be adopted. May I have a mover? Councillor Nietzsche, secondly, Councillor Todd. Was there any errors or omissions that anybody noted? Hearing none, call the vote. All those in favor? And this too will be carried unanimously. We're fortunate this evening. I'm hoping Mr. Paul Murray is online with an update of the city's asset management plan. Paul, do we have you online?
Hi, Mr. Mayor. Yes, thank you. Evening, Mayor and Council. I'm just here to give you a brief update on asset management again, which we hope will be an annual event as part of normal business before budget. I'm wondering if somebody could give me screen share capability so I can just share my screen.
We're working on that. Should just be a couple of seconds.
Yeah, thanks. Here we go. In 1 second here. Should be able to see that on the screen. I think I see it up there.
Yeah, it looks good. We're ready for your presentation.
Okay, thanks. Yeah, thank you, Mayor and Council. As I said, just a brief update on asset management. I know we spoke last year, so we wanted to give you just a recap on 23, the work we've done up till 24, and a couple of suggestions or recommendation which hope will flow through to your budget process. So if we look at 23 and just to recap, the asset financing strategy was developed. We talked about that. We talked about an asset health score target of 75% with a 14% past life number. I'll talk about that again in a few minutes. And that would translate to annual funding for replacement of both property taxes, water and sewer charges together, approved in the financial plan of just under 1.5 million, increasing to 1,575 in 24 and 1,675 in 25, or 348 up to 440 to a typical home. And that's what you'd previously approved. Asset replacement costs were updated as well. So we brought everything up to date. So what does that mean in terms of the 23 snapshot? And how has that changed from the previous year? Well, your replacement value of your assets, we've increased by about $12 million. Fairly conservative increase. We all know what inflation is running at, but it's about a 7% bump, and you're about $71,000 equivalent per typical home in terms of your public infrastructure now. So 191 million. And what that means is it costs a little bit more to replace as you go, and that will change every year, assuming we have inflation. And your vital signs that we talked about previously, not a lot of change from the previous year, and I'll talk about that in a minute, but overall 72% asset health score, which is comprised of your past life assets. So those are the assets that are technically beyond their service life, about 19%. And your assets overall are about 65% consumed, which is pretty similar, almost identical to the previous year. If you remember, our asset health score target's 75%, so actually pretty close to that. Not too bad. Just comparing to previous year, and as we get into future years, you'll see that the table will increase, and you'll get a little bit better of a trend. But no change in the asset health score from the previous year. Same with the past life, no change, and this is pretty normal. You don't see massive changes year to year. They should be gradual, and if we're really being disciplined and increasing our funding as we're talking about, these numbers should stay pretty consistent because you're already at a pretty decent asset health score. The trick now is to maintain it by increasing funding over the long term. Same thing, your asset consumption, it just ticked up just ever so slightly, so 64 to 65. Remember, our consumption target over time is 50%. So a little more consumed than we'd like, but not too bad. So what does that turn into in terms of our asset financial strategy? So if you recall, we talked about the three pieces: resiliency, affordability, and flexibility. And the first piece is resiliency, which is our asset health score, which is comprised, as I've said, our past life assets and our consumption ratio. So we also talked about this previously, where we break out the assets into categories. And through some work last year with staff and what we discussed with council, each of these asset categories we characterized as either high, medium, or low in terms of the impact that it would have if there was a failure or a service disruption, those sorts of things. And then we translated that into a past life number for each category. So for example, water, we said we don't want to have more than 10% of our water assets go beyond their useful life or their past life. Same for sewer and storm. So those are the high categories. We'll go a little higher in transportation and buildings, a little bit higher in fleet and equipment. So overall, that translates to a 14% target that we want to continue to work towards. How did we do? In terms of water, pretty close, just slightly above. So we call that we'll put an amber there for that one, just ever so slightly above. Same with sewer, pretty good, just ever so slightly above. Storm, a little bit under. Transportation is the one, and I think you've likely had conversations about your transportation system, and I know that's likely a focus of capital budget conversations. But that one's quite a bit significantly above the resiliency target. So I think, and I hope that's where activity will be in the near term to try and bring that down a bit. Buildings are in good shape. Fleet and equipment is pretty much on target. So overall, that translates to a 19% past life number, which is just a little bit above where we'd like it to be. So overall, we're saying that's a neutral, pretty good. Not quite where we'd like it to be, but pretty good. If we want to talk about flexibility, that's the second part of our three-part system. If you recall, that's the capacity you have to pay for unplanned asset replacements if something happens that we haven't planned, as a breakage or there's an event that causes some infrastructure work that's needed. And then your capacity to pay for planned asset replacements, i.e. through your asset management program. And we want to have enough reserves and debt capacity to enable you to do that. And if you maintain that, then you can say you're pretty flexible. So the first part we talked about was some debt capacity, and we wanted to have about $8 million, just over $8 million in debt capacity. So this is debt that's not funded from property taxes currently. It's just part of your statutory debt capacity limit that you could access if you really needed to. And that was for unplanned replacements, emergencies, new projects, and asset replacement projects. So about $8 million you want to keep there and not use it for something else. Well, what do you have available? You have your debt capacity number is about 23 million. You've used around 4. So you've got just under $19 million available. So well above the minimum that we'd want to see kept for asset replacement. So some good flexibility there. The next part we talk about is reserves. Same thing last year, we talked about it, and we wanted to maintain about $5 million just over in reserves. 3.6 for unplanned replacement in all categories, and about 1.7 we needed to help with the asset management program from time to time. So about 5, and you've got just under 7. So again, that's got the green tick there. That's good. We're above the minimum number that we need. So last part of affordability, extent to which taxpayers can afford the fees, annual cost to the average home or the typical home. And you just see the comparison from 22 to 23. Overall, total property taxes to typical home, 2760 up to 2952. And your infrastructure replacement number now is up to 374. And that includes water, sewer, and taxes. So overall, pretty good. Could quite easily, with a little bit of work, get our resiliency number into the green. And affordability is always a bit of a question about how you interpret that, and so we're fairly neutral on that one. But overall, I think pretty decent health score and good reserves and debt. I think the question is, how do you go about being disciplined and increasing your funding over time so you maintain those and they don't slide, because they're pretty decent. Thinking about focusing on transportation as well. And if you do happen to have other funds that come in, maybe it's grants through the Growing Communities Fund or elsewhere, those can help improve as well. Those are generally one-time funds, so you can't rely on them all the time. But if you do happen to achieve them or are successful in getting them, then you can certainly use those to continue the program here and improve it. So just a reminder, we talked about this previously, but impact of the current funding track. So if we just held funding at this point now and didn't increase it, we talked about this previously, that you'd see a gradual slide over time in your asset health score over the planning period, which is 30 years for our purposes. You drop down to about a 30% asset health score, which means over or around about 50% of your assets are past their life, and overall fully consumed. What that means is some of the assets are approaching their useful life and some of them are well over. So when you average it all together, it's fully consumed, we would say. Proposed 24 to 28, stay the course. It's about being disciplined, as difficult as it is. That's moving forward, continuing to move forward with the 75% asset health score. It's really about getting your funding up to $3.2 million a year from taxes, water, and sewer, which is the equivalent of about $1,500. And that's, as we've talked about before, works out to about this 4.8% property tax increase. I know with staff, water and sewer are in pretty good shape, so there's not the suggestion for increasing those at this time, more the focus on property taxes and the transportation system for the capital program. So your current position, you're about 24% of where you need to be. Sounds low, but the good thing is if you keep focused and increase over time, you can get there. It just needs some long-term discipline. If you do that, then we currently at a 72% asset health score. We end up or maintain that, and we end up at 75%. So basically, staying the course keeps your assets in similar condition, slightly reduces the level of consumption over time, but pretty well keeps them where they are, which is pretty good. So the suggestions or the recommendations: maintain the health score of 75 with the 14% past life target. Continue your planned increases, equivalent to the average 4.8% increase, which translates to these numbers, which you would see through your budget process and consider them at that point. No significant increase suggested for water and sewer. The funding's pretty substantial at this point, and I think in discussions with staff, the focus was on general fund and particularly transportation. So focus on property taxes. and then plan to continue your investment in replacement through the proposed 5-year capital program that I know you'll see in your budget if you haven't already. With that, that's the end. Trying to be as brief as possible for you. Happy to answer any questions.
I'll open the floor to questions.
Yeah, thank you, Paul. I had a quick question about we're doing inspections of our sewer system and we're looking at lining pipes. Does that get incorporated into your data as we move forward for life expectancy and past lifespan, or does that data work in somehow?
Thank you. Yeah, yes, absolutely. Any data, it might be that you do a pavement management program update, and you assess your road system. It could be just the general knowledge of the crews in the field that have a thought about a particular area is perhaps they're seeing more breaks or more repair history, and so we want to adjust the remaining service life. Same thing with the video inspections. If there's information coming from that is that's starting to indicate an area should perhaps be replaced a little quicker than we're expecting, then you want to incorporate that. Similarly, if we're seeing that an area is pretty good and it's not too bad, but it's looking like it was due for replacement, say in 2 or 3 years, but we think we can stretch it out longer, then certainly we'd be talking about doing that. So the trick to this is to normalize the process as you referred to with video inspections, any kind of field work, and incorporate that in the model without getting too detailed about it. But build off the knowledge of your staff in the field. And so yeah, sorry, long answer, but yes.
Any further questions? Paul, I'd just like to ask quickly, early in the presentation, you quoted our assets at about $71,000 per home. With any of the other municipalities that you look at, is that a normal cost or would that be high or low based on our population? Would you be able to provide any insight to that?
Yeah, it's funny. It kind of have that question regularly, and the answer is that there is no regular or normal, if you want to call it, number, because every community is different, and it would depend on the proportion of your community that, for example, is sewered, has water. We have some communities where there's only a small proportion that has water and the rest is wells, which wouldn't be included. So, we haven't, I'm just trying to think top of my head, examples, 40, 50,000, 60,000. 71, I wouldn't, I don't have a comparison to say 71 is high. I think my home community where I live in Central Saanich in Victoria is 75% agricultural with 2 villages interspersed within it. So we have significant amounts of pipes to get between the villages and significant amount of roads relative to the number of houses. So, in Central Saanich's case, I suspect that number will be higher. So we generally wouldn't try and do a comparison with other communities unless you could say it's a similar community with similar sort of breadth of assets and similar road system, which I think would be unusual if you had one that was similar enough to make a comparison.
Thank you. One further question, moving along. Our scores that we're attaining, we look like we're doing reasonably well. There's still work to be done. And is that comparable to other municipalities, or are the economic times really dragging the other municipalities approximately our size down?
Yeah, I think you're pretty good in comparison. I think clearly you can see the indicator that transportation is an area of focus, and to my mind, that's perfect. That's what you want the system to do, is to help indicate where you should focus your work. And I think staff are already doing that by the sounds of it. We have a couple of communities that are quite young, so they have a score in the 90s, but that's because their assets are really new. And so what we're talking about is about how do you protect that in the future. They don't want to keep it at 90, and they recognize that, I don't think they'll be 75. They're probably going to be in the early 80s for them. and they want to plan ahead so we can maintain that number. So I think maintaining a 75 score with the levels of past life assets in each of those categories, I think is quite reasonable. I think you just have to look at it every few years in comparison to the cost to the taxpayer and see if you're still there, or you want to let it slide a little bit, or if you're experiencing too much risk with that number, then move it up a bit. But I wouldn't say chop and change it every year. I would suggest maybe that's every 5-year review.
One more time, any further questions for Paul? Thank you very much for your presentation.
Thank you.
Appreciated.
Thank you. Happy to be here. Good night.
And next we'll be looking for our OCP update. I believe we have Darcy online and maybe Dan as well.
Yeah, I'm here. How's everyone doing?
Hello, gentlemen.
Hi there. I'm just getting the presentation loaded here, and we'll get going.
Are you able to see it on your end in Town Hall or City Hall?
Yes, we are. Thank you.
Perfect. Yeah, appreciate the opportunity just to get a bit of time in your agenda today. Just wanted to give a quick update on the OCP update project. Largely just going through some of the work that was done through the OCP engagement that took place in November. A lot of this stuff we'll go through, we kind of covered in great detail at the final meeting as part of that OCP in a week engagement. But just wanted to refresh you on some of the kind of key themes, activities, results that transpired from that engagement with a specific focus on the community survey. At the time when we did that kind of wrap up presentation, the survey had still was still active, and we were still collecting results on that. So we're going to spend a bit more time just kind of combing through some of the key results that jumped out from the community survey. But also just to give you a bit of a refresher point on where we're at in the process as we move towards compiling a first full draft to review with the community in March and April. So again, if at any point there's questions, feel free to interject as I go through this. Darcy, you want to hit the next slide? So yeah, I'll just quickly again go back to where we're at in the broader process. We'll talk a bit about the engagement summary report that's been prepared for the city. Just again, a quick recap of the OCP in a week engagement, and then just take a bit more time to go through some of the key survey results that came out of the community survey. Just followed by, again, some of the general themes and next steps as the project moves forward into phase 3. So yeah, just as a reminder, and I know we've seen this image quite a few times in quite a few presentations, but we are in the midst of phase 3 of the project, which is developing and reviewing the draft OCP. So taking all of the kind of themes and community input and engagement that we collected back in November, coupled with our own, technical review of the existing OCP, conditions in the community, demographics, population, housing projections, and so forth, meetings and workshops with staff. We're in the midst of about the 50% point of having a full updated OCP compiled as part of phase 3, which we'll look to bring back out to the community for a second round of engagement. Right now, we're just kind of finalizing the dates. It's looking like it may push into early April to mid-April, just to account for some people's schedules, but still very well on time with the originally planned project schedule. Following that, going into phase 4, using the inputs that we collect on the draft OCP in April, we'll compile a final draft to go through the referral, reading, and adoption process in June and July. So we're still very much on schedule. I'm very happy with how smooth the process has gone to date. Again, just looking forward to really getting over the next big milestone, which is the first full draft. So as part of the key deliverables in this project, again, revolving around engagement, we've produced an engagement summary report. We typically call these what we heard report. which really just provides a high-level summary of all the engagement activities, communications that were conducted in October, November, a high-level overview of some of the key themes or input that we were consistently hearing during those engagement activities, followed by appendices that have every single detailed response from community meetings, stakeholder meetings, full results of the community survey. So you can really dive into the data, so to speak, at the end of the report. And the front half is really just a very high level summary of what happened and what we heard. We've designed this report to be a public document if that's something that you want to include on the OCP website that we've developed. If it's something that I want to keep as an internal document, that's great. We just find that sometimes having this document available to the public can help promote a sense of transparency in the community and just let them know that we have been listening and we have been taking their feedback into account as we go through this project. So just to recap the engagement, as you know, we did, Lori, the mayor did some student engagement with each school in the community, really just asking some high level questions on, what do you envision, the future of Armstrong to be? How do you commute, from your home to school? What are some areas in the community that are really important to you? And through that, we had over 200 students engaged, some of which were through students participating in those meetings. Some of those students submitted little surveys that we provided. And all of that information, again, has been transcribed and put into the What We Heard report. So you can see every individual response. Some of the key themes, we showed the slide at the wrap-up presentation in November, but really some of the key themes coming out were just students really appreciating the small town sense of community in Armstrong. A lot of reference to a lot of the good recreation facilities that are in place, like the pool and the park. When it was questions about what are things that you'd like to see in the future, a lot of it more so revolved around more opportunities for socialization, recreation, just being active outside, having spaces specifically for youth where they can go and have fun and be active, which kind of corresponds with, stuff that we heard from their parents, at the community meetings and at the stakeholder meetings, this focus on creating spaces for youth. Go to the next slide. And that was followed again by the OCP in a week where we had community kickoff and the open house, pop-up events at different spaces throughout the community. Through that, we had just 55 to 60 attendees come to those meetings at City Hall. Probably had another 75 to 100 people come and, participate at the pop-up events, provide input, speak to the project team, get more information. Next slide. The community partner meetings. So we had 23 or 25 participants over the 3 sessions representing 10 different local organizations. I know many of mayor council members were at these meetings as well and participated. So we had representatives from local business groups, local developers, realtors, key landowners in the community. And we had some really, really great conversation where we were able to dig into some, specific topics or bigger questions. And then that was again followed by the survey that was up for about 4 weeks. And we collected over 260 surveys, which I thought was a really good result, especially given the types of questions. It was a long survey. There were some very specific, but also some very big and broad questions that were posed. It wasn't like a, very easy survey, so to speak, but we had over 260 of those completed. And a lot of the input we got was really great. So really in-depth comments, well thought out comments. And again, those full results are attached to the appendix of the What We Heard report, or the engagement summary report. And then there's just some more photos. So you'll see in the What We Heard report, we also have included photos of the different activities as we go through. And then with the survey results, I think they more or less just reaffirm some of the key themes or topics that we were already aware about and that were again brought up through the OCP and a week engagement activities. So, really prioritizing or focusing on housing affordability. Um, you know, how do we increase housing stock in the community? How do we create a vibrant downtown core? How do we establish a more diverse economy and opportunities for employment and be open to certain types of growth, but balancing that with keeping our small town feel, our local character, the charm, the things that make our community special. And as you'll see, like this is kind of the big theme that has been percolating through all of the engagement that we've been doing. It's, what's the sweet spot in terms of how we grow and develop in a community and where we want to go in the future. And something that we're, is kind of the focal point of the draft OCP that we're putting together. Again, it's trying to find that sweet spot. So on that note, I'll turn it over to Darcy, and he'll just go through, again, the survey results now that we have them fully compiled, and just going through some of the kind of key questions that popped up or the key results that caught our interest.
Thanks, Dan. Yeah, last time we had these results in front of you, I think we had around 50 responses. So like Dan mentioned, had about over 260, which we were quite pleased about that level of response. So I have about 5 slides of graphs showing some questions that we thought were some more standout responses. Like Dan mentioned, the survey, it did have a little bit of length to it, so these are not all the responses that we received. Again, if you'd like to go through those, they're in the appendix, and you can really dive into those. But to kick things off here, the first question here is indicate your quality of life in Armstrong, your opinion on the quality of life. Scoring really high as a place to live, as a place to raise a family, and as a place to retire. Some room for improvement we saw with Armstrong as a place to work and Armstrong as a place to play. So these are some themes that we'll talk about a little bit later in the next few slides here. But people had overwhelmingly positive things to say about the quality of life in Armstrong, but did see some areas to improve. So for subjects that Armstrong can focus on in the next 20 years, sort of a standout that we thought was interesting was many of the residents thought that ensuring essential services like water, sewer, roads, and waste management are managed sustainably. So that was sort of an interesting topic for folks to zero in on. And some other interesting things to note were people wanted to see the city's growth managed responsibly and to see more recreational facilities like ice rinks, pools, meeting spaces, parks, and trails networks. So this one was no surprise. We heard this from nearly everyone we spoke to, and at the OCP week, and this one was a big topic in the survey as well. As Armstrong continues to grow, which of the following are most important to focus on? Affordable home ownership, far and above. People were really zeroed in on that as being something to focus on in the future. Accessible housing for seniors or people with disabilities was also a hot topic, but affordable home ownership is really on people's minds, and we'll be, of course, incorporating this into the OCP as we're drafting it. So this question focused on transportation initiatives, and we asked folks to choose the 3 most important initiatives in their minds. So coming out on top were road improvements, the rail trail, and intersection improvements. So we in the OCP will have a section focusing on connectivity and transportation, and we'll definitely be relying on these survey results to put that section together. And the final graph here for commerce and industry, folks felt that supporting new business was one of the most important initiatives. We heard that a lot. Folks speaking about the downtown core. They want it to be more vibrant, and part of the way that they saw that future unfolding was supporting new business. And in the comments for this question, we did hear a lot about revitalization of the downtown core and attracting new business. So we also had some questions on the survey about what people value about Armstrong. Things like walkable neighborhoods, that small town feel was a pervasive one. Residents wanted to keep that sense of community spirit. They loved Armstrong's great events, and like was indicated earlier, the residents feel that it's a great place to raise their family. So these elements, these values, we are already incorporating into the draft OCP, which we're putting together in the next few weeks here. So these were important to have on paper for us to recognize. So an important part of an OCP is defining the community's vision. So we had a number of questions about asking people what they felt would be important to Armstrong and the growth of Armstrong going into the future in the next 20 years. And some similar themes here. People were envisioned a diverse and vibrant downtown core. They envisioned transportation opportunities. So that means with multimodal corridors, bike lanes, green spaces, trails that connected the whole city together. There was also the many comments about multi-generational gathering spaces. So places where people of all ages can come together and experience some cultural events or commerce opportunities. The natural environment was also a really big theme, as well as retaining the small town character and our agricultural heritage of Armstrong. So all these points will be used to build the community vision, which will be a centerpiece of the OCP. Okay, and so for the next step of where we go from here, like I mentioned, we're initiating the first draft of the OCP alongside Armstrong planning staff. We're working on some mapping that will be center point of the OCP. And then we have, like Dan mentioned, some engagement coming up in the spring. Where, like Dan mentioned, we're still looking to finalize that date, but it should be in late March or early April, where we'll have some fairly similar type of events as our first OCP in a week. We'll have open houses. We'll have key community partner meetings, pop-up engagement, and as well as presentations to you at council and staff. And the goal of this second engagement is to show the people that we engaged with initially that what we've put together in terms of the draft OCP and solicit their comments on what they think about how we did and what changes could be made to that draft in order to finalize it. And that's it for me. Dan, if you had any closing comments.
No, just, yeah, as I was mentioning before, just wanted to take this opportunity to just kind of refresh everyone on the work that's been done to date. And some of the key themes, discussion points that were really focal on the engagement that we had in November. Because as Darcy's mentioned, as I mentioned, like those are really going to be like the center points to shaping the OCP and trying to ensure that we pull as much of that input into the policy, the visioning, even the mapping that we develop as part of this. So moving forward, when we do have the first draft, city staff, yourselves will have opportunities to review it before it goes out, public to the community. So just to let you know that there will be an opportunity to review the draft before we launch this second round of engagement. And I know we have like the planned activities listed there, but we're also, again, based on our experience and what we learned going through the first round, like I'm also open to exploring alternative methods of engaging the communities we go through. So yeah, that's still very much a work in progress, and we'll look to finalize all of those details in early March.
Thank you. I'm just going to ask council if anybody had any questions regarding the presentation. I just had one that came to mind. Reading a lot of the comments sections, it seems like a lot of responses were from people that actually don't live in the city of Armstrong. They may be from a spell machine or visitors. And I was wondering, was there any discussion on identifying where engagement participants are from while we're collecting this data? And two, if there was no discussion previously when we do the spring engagement, are we able to identify that and see how that may have skewed numbers moving forward? I know lots of communities use our facilities here, and we appreciate that and want them to continue. But I believe the taxpayers of Armstrong should probably have the most pertinent say in how we develop moving forward.
Yeah, and great comment and question. And we are able through especially through the survey results, able to delineate responses by the area of residence that the respondent selected, so we can kind of filter that through. And then it's a little bit more difficult to delineate that from the open house events and the community meetings, but through the community partner groups, we have a good understanding of who is who in the zoo, so to speak, and again, able to kind of match their input from maybe other participants that aren't residents or ratepayers here in the city, but definitely something that we can take a look at as we go into the next round and look at other strategies to ensuring that the bulk of the input that we have or that we get through that next round of engagement is from the local community.
Thank you. Once again, I'll open up. Is there any other questions anybody may have? Seeing none, I'll thank you for your hard work thus far, and looking forward to the next update and our next engagement sessions. Thank you very much.
Appreciate the time. Great seeing everyone again, and we'll talk soon.
Thanks very much.
Next, we're going to move on to departmental updates, and I'm going to hand the mic over to Ms. Lowe to lead us through this.
Thank you, Your Worship. We have updates from 3 departments this evening. We're going to start with corporate services update. We just have Philippa Harding come and give us a quick update. Second one this month, so we tried not to repeat things.
We try not to. Sometimes it's a stretch. I wanted to update you all, especially after the question last meeting regarding the Instagram account. We are up and running. We were pulled because they didn't believe we were a government, and Emily was apologized to, and oh look, yes, you are a government. So yes, we are live once again. Website. I have spoken with our website provider. We are talking with them on revamping a few things to make it a little more user-friendly, so our residents will be able to locate things a little more easily, hunt down any information they want, anything about council, the meetings. We want it to be more intuitive for our residents. So that will be coming up probably late spring. We'll start really diving into that. The records management program, which we did the policy last meeting and first 3 readings, and tonight we are slated for adoption. I've started going through our location of some of our records to see where things are, and that's even upstairs, started to reorder some of those. So we are starting to move, which actually feels kind of good, even if it is a bit dusty. And then the strategic priorities, we've worked on that and got that all put together, and slowly but surely we're getting through and launching into our next few years.
Thank you. Any questions for Philippa? Good. Oh, okay. Community services and emergency program updates, Mr. Smith.
Thank you. Good evening, Mayor and Council. Within community services, I'm happy to announce that we had applied this past fall for Indigenous cultural safety and humidity training through UBCM, and we were a successful applicant for that application. So we received just under $9,000 that will be put towards a training opportunity for emergency management staff, as well as also council, and we've extended invitations to other emergency program coordinators within the North Okanagan, including their CAOs, that will come in and participate over 2 days, 2 half-day training sessions that I think will provide a really great opportunity for us to get a strong understanding of our ways, our partnerships that we can create with our Indigenous communities, have a strong understanding of past history, its effects on our Indigenous communities, and how we can really strengthen our working relationships, particularly when it comes to emergency management, but also working as governments that represent our communities. So really looking forward to that. Invitations have been sent out to all staff and to Mayor and Council. So and to the other members that have been invited. So we've had a good response so far. So looking forward to those 2 dates coming up in March. Under spring freshet and a drought update, right now, we were looking pretty good. If you can see by the numbers in that, a couple of weeks ago, we went from the deep freeze into really getting a good punch of snow, which was the precipitation that we do need and that we continue to need. As you can see, over the past week, we've had a significant melt that's occurred. We aren't seeing any flooding within our region at this time. The South Coast is seeing a little bit of high stream flow activities, but we haven't seen that yet. Freezing levels are sitting up around 2,500 meters, and we're hoping that those will start to come down in the coming week to bring things back to a balance to where we need them to be. If you think about the mountains as being a sponge, we want that burn off to occur slowly within not only the lower regions, but also in the upper regions of the mountains. We don't want it to happen too quickly, because then it just flushes out our system and makes it to where areas that we don't need it. Not to say that, but in the sense and context is we need that snowpack within the mountains for a long term. So we're really hoping that between now and April is really sort of the time period where we receive 80% of our snowpack, that we'll continue to see those snow levels go up. From the previous chart, if you can go back for a sec. Thanks, Philippa. You can see that, the blue line here is where we are right now. We're getting back a little bit closer now to the normalcy of where we need to be. And those readings were as of the 29th. So, the 28th of January. So yesterday. So it's we're creeping closer. So let's keep our fingers crossed that we'll continue to see that success. We've been working with our operations manager, ensuring that that we've got sandbags in place, that they're usable for that freshet season when it does start here, which is typically generally the first week of May, first week of March, Second week of March is typically when we see most of our bottom snow levels within the valley bottom start to burn off. That raises up to about that 1,000-meter level, and then through 1,000-meter level up to approximately about 1,500 meters to 2,000 meters. That's typically when we see the burn off between that March 1st beginning and then ending approximately about the second to third week of May. So we'll see what happens in the coming weeks and months. Under the North Okanagan Regional Fire Smart Committee title, I've been doing a lot of work on our application. It's very in-depth and it's not a lot of information that provides you, particularly when it comes to budget building and what our community needs are. Waiting for our fire chief to return from some time off. I'll be meeting with him and as well as some representatives from our wildfire services to build a good solid application for our community. But I've also been in conversation with our other emergency program coordinators in regards to their programs, what they're doing. And there's a general consensus that we want to continue to work together, particularly with this program. A couple of communities that have been doing this for a couple of years have been working with the Kelowna program, but we really felt the importance of having a localized regional program would make us very successful to be able to share and work together on this project, but also overall with emergency management. We may and other communities will have a central based committee for their organization, for their local community. But at this time, I'm going to start participating in those meetings. We're just working on a date and we'll have a solid establishment of looking at who we'll want to be bringing in for further representation on that community. So we'll keep you up to date as we move that along. So we're going ahead of that. I think council would probably be supportive of that, knowing that you were supportive of us applying for an application or putting in an application for the funding of the program.
Thank you, Warren. Is there any questions for Warren?
Perhaps the long range forecast, Warren, doesn't look good. Like doesn't look like it's gonna be a lot of snow anymore. It looks like a lot more melting.
So through the mayor, precipitation is very difficult for Environment Canada and other organizations to predict. They've seen the shift with the El Nino, so they're predicting, and I will continue to use that word predicting, to say that, okay, we've seen that shift. They're anticipating that we're going to go back to normal temperatures, which means that we should start to see some cooling off as early as this coming weekend, potentially. Whether there's precipitation that comes with that, we don't know. You know, they rely on multiple different science to really predict and nail down what they think it's going to do. But they are saying that they have seen that shift from those very warm temperatures that we were seeing up until really January 1st, first week of January. So they've seen that shift. So we're really hoping that we'll continue to see that shift downwards, move south, and then we'll get back to some normal temperatures. What we've gone through in the past week is very warm for this time of year. And we note that, that this is hopefully only a blip on the radar, as you saw from the graph. We did see a fairly good significant climb, I believe, Silver Star over a 7-day period. The update was 65 centimeters. So.
Yeah, Warren, just had a question. You were mentioning a regional approach. I just want to make sure I understand for the Fire Smart initiative what that really means. As a coordinated approach, or what? Can you give me a little bit more detail around that?
Okay, so through the mayor. So with the Fire Smart program, you are required to host and hold a Fire Smart committee. So your organization, the city of Armstrong, if we are successful with our application, would be required to bring in a series or a group of individuals that are experts in the field that can provide support to their program and build that program. So that is part of the application to hold that requirement. A number of communities, as I said, already have existing programs and are already running their own committees. But it was looked at from the aspect of there's some very educated and knowledgeable people that have been doing this for a couple of years. There's some newbies, such as us, and also recognizing that the threat of wildfire and the success of this program is really going to take a regional approach. So if we're all using the same messaging and using opportunities to capitalize not only on the mitigation efforts, but also working on the what ifs and the preparedness, and then also the public education in that as well, that instead of one local government going out and promoting the program at a community event for something, it could be something that could be done as a shared resource so that it's not taxed all on one community as a whole. And it shows really a good, strong effort within the North Okanagan that we're working together.
So Warren, then it would be the same people on one committee that service the whole region?
That is correct. It would be this, we're going to, the initial discussions will be held with all of the emergency program coordinators from our region. And we'll look at the dynamics of the existing committees that are out there, and then look to see what type of representation that we feel would benefit our program to be successful and to help us build capacity. And there has been discussions, as I mentioned, that we could still host and hold an internal committee that is specific to the city of Armstrong and bringing in representatives from our community.
Thank you. So we'd be essentially learning from committees that have already been formed throughout the years, similar to what we've done with the accessibility committee. We've gone regional, but we could do separate individual Armstrong, made in Armstrong solutions as well.
Yes, that
Yeah.
is correct.
Okay, thank you. Okay, any more questions for Warren? Okay, run. Public Works updates from Mr. Ackerman.
Thank you. So we did get an updated schedule for CN Works. They're going to be Tuesday to Tuesday shifts. They roll in for their 7-week or 7-day rotation. And then they demobilize and slow things down. They come back in the following Tuesday. And they'll do that likely for 3 cycles to put the infrastructure in that they have planned for the Mill Street crossing as well as the Okanagan Street crossing. It is the cantilever arms and lights and associated warning systems. So it will be a change for the community. But we will work with CN to minimize the impact and get our corridor through town here returned to an acceptable state here, hopefully by March. Those are the big ones. I'm able to answer any questions.
Your worship, thanks, Brad. Actually, more question for Dawn. Dawn, last time we saw correspondence from CN Rail regarding the safety crossing updates. I'm not sure that council ever, not sure what action we took regarding their request for partner funding, and if we are contributing to that project or not, or if CN just went ahead and did it, or could you just give us a little update as to where we landed with that?
Sure, through your worship. So CN, it wasn't waiting for us to come up with an amount of money. They did offer a 50% if they received grants that they were applying for. So everything was based on it if, but really they're ordered. We are a low priority. We're at their low priority now. So they're getting this done. They have timelines that they have to get it done within. And so they're doing their work. The funding has not been discussed. And there has been no request come to the city.
So it might have been better for me not to mention it. Okay, that's fine. That's all I was wondering, because I know that the council hadn't authorized any expenditure for that I was aware of through any budgeting or anything like that. So, I think Councillor Fowler was with me at UBCM when we did talk to CN Rail at their, with some of their staff, their community services type staff that were there. And we did mention some concerns regarding hardship and is it, was it really fair for small communities to have to pay for that, for their compliance with the safety act for their business, and they seem to be nodding in agreement. So perhaps that helped. I don't know.
Different topic? Same topic, but not financial. I was just wondering, do we have any say at all about the area between the walls that are still there, going back to the place they were when they came in and chewed it all up?
Yeah, through your worship, yes, we'll work with the crews. Each day gets muddier and more tore up that they do the work. So we will work with them to ensure that that gets reinstated to an acceptable town standard. This is not in the middle of Spence's Bridge where there's nothing around. This is in a populated area. So we have that, we have communicated that, and we will continue to work with them to ensure that gets rectified.
And they are aware that we had many areas that had drought tolerant plants and nicely landscaped and various lawns and ground covers and benches and whatnot?
They are aware, and they do have a small army, so it's just trying to keep them contained.
Thank you, your worship. But Brad, different topic. When I was we had that last snowfall, I was quite happy to see that on the website we had the responsibilities of the residents and the business owners. That really helped for me to be able to communicate that. I'm just thinking in terms that pointed me to the winter maintenance policy. I'm just curious what our capacity is and where we're at with being able to meet the service levels of that winter maintenance policy. In your opinion, if there are challenges or if it's going okay or.
Yeah, through your worship, the winter maintenance policy is we're able to meet the standards within that, and we do follow that policy as it's laid out because that's what the standard is that we're held against. At times, we do have a few resource challenges just with the size of our crew. The one thing we experienced with this recent snowfall is we had one staff member away on vacation. We had another staff member away on training, and then staff member was sick for a good portion of the week. the one staff member that came off of standby has that ability to take the Friday off. So we were running just, I think we're about 56% capacity to be able to have all of our resources out there. So it did challenge us at a time to get enough equipment out, and the snowfalls were concurrent. They did fit that major snow event, consistent snowfall over 24 hours. We didn't hit that 15 centimeter threshold, but that continual snowfalls. But we were able to get R1s, R2s and sidewalks cleared on initial passes. Definitely not down to the bare minimum, but within our parameters of the snow clearing policy, we were able to get those standards met, but it was challenging.
Just on that, I was going to say, when we put the communication out on a Monday morning, I think it was, that in the next 2 or 3 days, there'd be, a lot of effort going into getting things done with the weather changing. People really liked that. I think it was, to me, it was an aha moment that even if we're having some, we don't have to exactly spell out what it is, but if we're having some challenges meeting that, if we communicate with people and tell them we're on it. And I recall somebody, a community a few years ago was having trouble, I think it was Prince George, having trouble with getting everything done. And someone with a sense of humor, but very respectful, came out and said, well, we're trying to be everywhere at once. And, we're having, but just, I think the communication is really key. And probably the hardest time to communicate to the residents that there's a problem is when maybe you're not meeting a standard, or whether you're challenged with something else, but really that communication goes so far.
Yeah, through your
No
worship.
more phone calls from residents after that communication came out for me.
Through your worship, we having Emily now for communications, it's been good. We've been learning how to utilize that. And a lot of the times my hello to Emily is what are we going to communicate today? So I've been trying to feed information there to get it out in a timely manner. We've done stuff in the cold snap, how to deal with frozen pipes, and kind of some high level expectations for residents, just to understand where we're at in the process. And because a lot of the times they don't realize that when we do come along and there is a large windrow, that equipment is not far behind. It's helping them understand the process, which has gone a long ways, as well as just being out in the field between myself, Carrie, our operations foreman, going out and just seeing where the priorities are and helping to direct the crew. We both carry shovels in the back of our trucks, and there's times that we will stop and help a resident shovel their driveway end and just make that contact and get the feedback. So things that we can do like that just to help garner a better understanding has been very helpful. No one's thrown shovels at us this year. We have more waves versus the one finger wave. So it's been a positive.
Yeah, thank you, Your Worship. Just a kind of a follow-up, I guess, my previous question. One of the things that I noticed and I've heard from the community is that in the morning when the students are walking to school, a lot of times the sidewalks, whether it be resource or timing or shifts, they're not able to be cleared. I was thinking to myself, a lot of times it seems like it probably would fall on the homeowners to actually have a lot of those cleared the day before. However, there are times that I think that it doesn't, when you're watching some students walking on the roads because they've been cleared and sanded instead of the sidewalks, and then they pack it down and they're walking back on ice and they're doing the same thing because of the ice. If there is a way to maybe address those timings, I think that would potentially ease a lot of pain. I don't know if there's a comment on that or if it's just the ongoing challenge is what it sounds like.
Yeah, through your worship. It's sidewalk unit typically is on the road by 7 a.m. We have a crew that starts at 6 a.m., which grabs 2 of the trucks and hits the R1s and R2s. So they kind of get out and get a head start on that. And then the sidewalk has their priority route, which does the schools and the downtown and tries to get that going. Typically, snowfalls under 5 centimeters is the responsibility of the homeowners. Now we will come around with the sidewalk traffic and push everything off and widen things out to help, but we're not that first line of defense. And so we're helping to educate the public on that. And that goes for in between snowfalls where the cities come out and done those initial passes and we have a little bit more of an accumulation. We would look to our residents to help us with that. But if we could time when the snow fell, it would help us coordinate to make sure the kids could get to school without any problems. but unfortunately, we don't have that luxury yet.
Just as a follow-up, Your Worship. So my understanding is the city is responsible for when it's under 5 centimeters in front of our walkways and our sidewalks, and Parks and Rec would be the same. Or do we have the capacities within our city to make sure that those expectations are met to those levels? Like, is that work factored into the bigger picture? Does that make sense?
Yeah, through Your Worship, that's correct. We do have those capacities in those sections where we have frontage. We do get out and clear that with a contingent of our staff that's not on equipment, just the same responsibilities as homeowners and businesses have.
Thank you, Your Worship. I think some of the challenges that we have with, especially this routes that head to the schools, is just that there's no houses along them, right? Like, so if you think of the long stretch on Rosedale by AES, so it's not really city frontage, it's school district frontage, but it's so far from the front of the school. So who, like, area is that in terms of responsibility? And same thing as you head up Pleasant Valley Road towards Lenwood and PVSS, is we have those like those townhouses there, right? But it's not the frontage isn't where they would be shoveling. And so it's kind of this no man's land really that there happens to be a lot of foot traffic on. Yeah. No question, just a statement.
Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just to follow up on an email that I sent about community members asking about snow gates on the vehicle or on our trucks or whatever. And it's because the equipment that we use doesn't have the capacity to have that on them, right? That's the reason why we don't utilize that.
Yeah, through Your Worship. So the snow gates are typically an attachment that you'll find on a large grader, and it basically has an arm that will come down when you go past the driveway, keeps the snow from rolling out into the driveway. When it gets back towards the ditch, the arm comes back up. Used largely in rural areas where you don't have as many driveways, and you can actually clean the roads with that piece of equipment. Our plow trucks are fitted with belly plows. So underneath the chassis, don't have that ability to put anything like that on to direct the snow. And the amount of driveways that we have and driveways that are beyond the 6-meter driveway width does create challenges. Plows have to go a certain speed to be able to move that snow depending on the moisture levels in it to get it off the blade. And inevitably you do get some driveways plowed in. We try and minimize that and we have that program, but it's always a challenge.
Yeah, thank you, Your Worship. I'm just wondering, just listening to the discussion and some of the comments from some of the councillors that, I don't think we need to do a full review of our snow removal policy, but I think Councillor Drappola's point regarding perhaps the policy has a slight gap in it related to some of those priority areas along the school areas where there's a gap between the expectation of residential homeowners to clear the sidewalks given a certain snow height versus or snow depth versus what's actually happening. And so I'm just wondering if maybe we should take a look at that, reviewing that section at least of the policy at some point, and the council can provide some insight. I think Councillor Wayner's points are made there as well, that perhaps we need to take a look at the primary routes to school on the sidewalks and ensuring that those areas are getting cleared, whether we're at 3 centimeters or 5 centimeters, whatever the number is, and finding a number that works so that they get cleared and safe for the kids to get to school. I don't know, maybe that's something for us to think about.
Yeah, through Your Worship, it's the S1 and S2 routes are pretty well laid out in how they address the priority routes for pedestrian traffic for schools and our downtown core. I think it is getting to the point where we should look to review our snow clearing winter maintenance policy, especially as we look at some of the changes to the community, active transportation, our OCP, densification. That's all going to create challenges for that policy. But the one thing that really comes down to it is a resourcing issue that would form part of that conversation to be able to look at how we can, meet a service level that the community is asking for. And we can weigh those pros and cons on resources to achieve that and the financial implications and have a clearer picture. But it is something for discussion probably in the near future.
Well, now I have three different topics I'd like to discuss with you since we're almost done with snow. There was just a recent Supreme Court decision that came down that I haven't forwarded to you yet. I just received it, and it was very interesting on clearing and residents and obligations and whatnot. And it will be perfect timing to do some review to our policy moving forward with that. The other two questions I had one was slightly off topic regarding Thomas Hayes. How long does it take to fill that our reservoir up out there?
Through your worship, we're at this time of the year about 50,000 cubic meters a month that we put back into the reservoir just from our effluent treatment operation. So, we try and give us capacity for about 6 months before the spray irrigation starts up. And so, yeah, but that's all dependent on environmental conditions and all the rest. So, but yeah, 50,000 is about our benchmark.
Great, thank you. So yeah, typically about six months to fill it back up, and then we drain back down to approximately 30%. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Thank you very much. And then one other question, in your conversations with CN, I'm curious, I have a little concern that it's such a short span between our two railroad crossings. And if they have those arms in sync with one another, that we could totally cut off one side of the town from the other, particularly for our fire response. I'm hoping to ensure that if the one on Okanagan is affected, that mill doesn't automatically close. And how are they operated when we have either shunting going on or the filling of train cars at the pellet factory? All things that could close our town right down.
Yeah, through your worship, that's a good point, and that's been raised by our fire chief as well. So we are having those discussions with CN. We've had a few chats in the field with staff that are installing the equipment. They are putting sensors all the way along the rail lines. You've probably seen the little huddles of 3 people huddled over the track. They are installing those sensors, and then we'll have that conversation with CN's public works manager and kind of the logistics of how they are working that when they are doing swaps of cars and that kind of stuff, and how they can override, and making sure that we do at least have one primary access point and not both blocked for extended periods of time. So we're waiting to get some additional information back from CN on how that will work.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just as an aside, I've had some conversations with CN about them leaving the trains idling overnight. And they're of the opinion that that's a commercial area and there's no residents around there. So I've set them straight on the fact that there are some residents in the area that they might want to take consideration. So perhaps you could maybe push that there are people that actually do live downtown within the area, like the apartment buildings, not just myself, but the apartment buildings and the hotel. So they were in the opinion that it was a commercial area. They didn't have to worry about leaving the trains idling overnight. So maybe we just educate them.
Yeah. That is a good point. We will remind them we do have a lot of commercial residential combinations, and it's not just a pellet plant.
Any further questions for Brad? Okay. Oh, yep.
If you get the chance, can you ask them to put the guards over top of the railroad tracks so that people can get strollers over them? Yes. I know it's not a big deal, but it is.
When I was there speaking with them, I did look down and look at the gap, and your comment did come to mind.
And I think it's fair comment, because if we are trying to work towards accessibility, I think it was a resident that came to our meeting that mentioned it to council, that crossing it in some sort of if you are mobility impaired is a challenge given the way it is there. So I'm sure they've experienced the same thing in other communities where they have some sort of an insert that they can place in there that makes it easier for people that have accessibility issues to get across there would be appreciated.
It is a key consideration, and even just maneuvering our town in the winter months in a wheelchair, we did actually have a resident come in and request some of the let downs be cleared, and we did manage to get that. And she did make a point of coming back in and thanking us, but it can be a challenge between the tracks and those other obstacles. So perfect. Thank you.
Thank you, Brad. We don't have a planning update, and we're going to be hearing from finance for the rest of the evening. So that's our update. Thank you, guys.
All right, well, we might as well just ask Janine to come up and steal the rest of the show here. Yeah. First, we'll be talking about the cemetery budget and fees.
Thank you, Your Worship. So we're here to talk two different reports, but all of our joint functions with the Township of Squamish in our budget planning process. So the first one we're going to look at, it's up on the screen, is the proposed budget for the cemetery, including service rate adjustments. So we have two different recommendations that council can consider, but I'll just go through the report first. So we are the joint owner of the cemetery located on Highland Park Road with the Township of Squamish. The township is the administrator, and we provide operating and capital funding at 50-50. Annually, the city is required to endorse the budget and the rates for the upcoming year. So city staff did meet with the township staff on the January 16th, and the township drafted the budget from those discussions. So overall, there is actually a decrease in operations for the city's perspective of just over $11,000. This is due to a proposed increase in the rates and also a decrease in the caretaker contract costs. For capital, the new columbarium is again in the budget, but we have been reassured that it will not be purchased unless it is needed. And the current columbarium has 44 slots still available. So I think we can rest assured that the new columbarium shouldn't be needed for 2024, but they want it in there just so we don't have to come back. The proposed rates are also attached in the report, and a comparison was done by township staff. Rates from over neighboring municipalities were looked at, and either the average of all of the rates is being recommended, or if a 3% increase to the 2023 rate is larger, then that rate is being recommended. Staff is supportive of the rate increases as it decreases our taxation burden and also moves the service towards being self-sufficient, which is important. So we have two recommendations. One is that the 2024 to 2028 financial plan for the Armstrong Squamish Cemetery be included in the 2024-2028 financial plan for the city of Armstrong as presented. That's the first one.
Can I have a mover? Sorry, Councilor Nietzsche, second by Councilor Drapala. Any question?
Brad and I were supportive of that going forward until the service is self-sustainable, right? The township is going through a staff change at the moment at the CFO level. So the current CFO is definitely supportive of that as well. And their operations manager was there as well. And he, like, we need to get this service sustainable, and we need to stop being the cheapest place in the valley, right? We're attracting all of these non-residents. We want to make sure that there's spots for our current residents, right?
Yeah, thank you. Just as a follow, I think, to me, that is a very consistent policy with how we've set other fees and stuff in the community as well, where we, not the highest, not the lowest, but we set the average, and then, and to me, that would make us competitive in the market. I don't know if you want to be competitive in this market, but it would make sense to me for that to be the sort of the ongoing benchmarking for setting the rates. But that's just my opinion, but I think staff are on the right path there.
Yeah.
Any further questions? I have one. There are multiple cemeteries in Squamish, not just one. And are we responsible for only one shared cemetery? And is the budget that they've proposed moving forward due to maintenance on all the other existing, or just the one cemetery?
Thank you for the question. So yes, it is just the one cemetery that we are responsible for, and just the costs are just the one that we share with the township. The township does have multiple other cemeteries, but they're not, some of them they're not municipally owned cemeteries. They're through churches or through other things. So they're not municipal cemeteries. Yeah.
Not necessarily a question about the rates and fees. I'm just wondering about the columbariums. Do you know, it says columbarium 1, 2, and 3. Is one the first one that was there when we originally did the landscaping up there? Is it full? And are we now on 2 and 3? Or which is the brand new one going to be? Is that going to be 3? Or 2? Or 4?
I believe, if I'm correct, I believe one is this is number 2 that we're purchasing. Or that are slated to be purchased. So number 1 is still not full.
Really?
Yeah, still 44 slots in number 1 to be done, and then we'll purchase number 2 and then we'll purchase number 3.
Thank you.
That's fine.
Any further questions? Then I will call the vote. All those in favor? And that will be carried unanimously.
And so the second recommendation for this report is that the proposed 2024 Armstrong Ball Machine Cemetery rates be approved.
Moved by Councillor Todd, second by Councillor Wayner. Any questions on those rates? We've addressed that. I will call the question. All those in favor? And that too will be carried unanimously. Thanks, Janine.
Thank you very much. So onwards to the budgets, financial plan. It's kind of a synonymous word, if I'll use both, as long as council is okay with that. So this is for our joint commissions. So proposed are our 2024 to 2028 budgets for Parks and Recreation and the Fire Services Commission. Both budgets have been fully endorsed by their commissions, are ready to be incorporated into the city's financial plan. So we'll start with Parks and Rec. At the December 18th, 2023 meeting, the operating budget was approved by the commission. It was increased by 1%, and the city's portion is about $6,500. No substantial changes are being proposed, and the CPI increase in the expenses was able to be offset by increased revenues for the rental of the arenas. For operations, the funding is split based on population, and so it's renewed every 4 years with the census. Currently, we're at 50.08% for the city and 49.92% for the township. At the recent January 16th meeting, the capital budget was approved by the commission. There are 3 capital projects / purchases for 2024. The funding is split based on ownership assets, and it's 50-50. The city does have sufficient reserves to fund the 2024 expenditures. Do you want to go one at a time, or do you want me to keep going to the fire? The recommendation, okay, sorry.
Yeah, why don't we just complete this one and then we'll move on. Thank you.
For sure. So the recommendation for that portion is that the 2024 to 2028 financial plan for the Armstrong Ball Machine Parks and Recreation Commission be included in the 2024 to 2028 financial plan for the city of Armstrong as presented.
I'll call the question, moved by Councillor Wayner, seconded by Councillor Valstar. Thank you. And any questions? Seeing that there are none, I will call the vote. All those in favor? And this will carry unanimously. Thanks, Janine.
Thank you very much. So onward to the Fire Services Commission. At the November 29th meeting, both the operating and the capital budgets were approved by the commission. The operating budget has a 4.5% or just over $19,000 increase for the city. This is due to the creation of a part-time clerk who's going to facilitate records management and customer service. There's a purchase of new CAD computers for the fleet, a strategic planning session for the commission, retaining tender 1 in a reserve capacity. It will become tender 1-4, I believe. And an increased funding for the fireworks display. To offset some of those expenses, the revenues are being increased as well due to fire inspection fees. And there was a successful grant for the purchase of SCBA. The funding is split based on taxable assessment and is revised annually. Right now, we're at the city at 45.67% and the township at 54.33%. The capital budget has 2 projects or purchases in 2024. Tender 1 had to be rebudgeted for 2024 as the delivery has been delayed, and it is expected to be this week delivered. The portion of the roof that was not replaced during the renovation in 2016 is now failing and needs to be replaced. So that's the other project. Capital is based on ownership, and it's 40% city and 60% township. Again, the city has sufficient reserves to fund the 2024 expenditures. I can read the recommendation if we want to go that far.
Sorry, so, yeah, we'll, is it there, did we read the motion?
I can read it right now.
Please, thank you.
Yep. So it's that the 2024 to 2028 financial plan for the Armstrong Spall Machine Fire Services Commission be included in the 2024 to 2028 financial plan for the city of Armstrong as presented.
And somebody will move, Councillor Drapula, seconder Councillor Todd, and I will ask for discussion. Once again, seeing there is none, I'll call the vote. All those in favor? And this will be carried unanimously also. Thank you. Moving on to bylaws, corporate services, the City of Armstrong Records Management Program bylaw number 1836, 2024. It's already received 3 readings. Tonight, we will be trying to adopt that. The motion will say that the City of Armstrong Records Management Program bylaw number 1836, 2024 for adoption. And do I have a mover? Councillor Nietzsche, seconder Councillor Fowler, and any questions on that? All those in favor? And it will be adopted. Thank you. Moving forward to some correspondence, we did receive a letter from the Royal Canadian Legion Branch 35, looking for a letter of support for a grant application to replace some doors on their building. We'll move the letter of support from Councilor Nietzsche, second from Councillor Todd. Were there any questions to that? All those in favor? And this too will be carried. Also, correspondence through the Okanagan Basin Water Board call for immediate action to prevent the invasive mussel introduction into BC. Looking for support. Councillor Farrell, would you like to speak to that?
Yeah, thank you. For sure, I'd offer support. I don't see a recommendation here that they're asking us to also send in a letter, but yeah, this is very important. It's almost still preventative, but not getting closer and closer where it's not. So absolutely.
Great. Yeah, and it is very important. I know people are working really hard on the background to prevent this spread of mussels, and it will greatly affect our lakes, particularly in the Okanagan and throughout the rest of the province. So we should throw our support behind there. Also, a letter from the Union of British. Sorry. I don't know that there's a motion required for. They're just asking for general support behind the letter that they've sent off.
I'm not familiar of other communities doing this, but I do know that it's a hot topic and it possibly will be coming to the regional district. But the more communities that are willing to make their voice heard on this, I think it's valued.
Through the chair to Councillor, I believe the city of Kelowna was drafting a resolution that's going to be presented at SILGA. So perhaps whoever is attending that convention, I certainly would hope that we would support that resolution that requests increased funding. And
did you have something to add?
Yes, through your worship. So in the letter, they refer to a letter that's linked for a call to action on October 18th with respect to moratoriums, but this did come to council, but it didn't really affect Armstrong, but our support we can be supportive during SILGA or UBCM in the resolutions. So I don't believe there's action required here, but in attendance at Silga when the resolution is being brought forward, we can vote in favor of supporting it. So it's more of a discussion.
Great. I hope that clarifies that paper for everybody. Also moving on, UBCM sent out a letter that they've finalized the second half of the payment on the awarding of the grant for the firefighter turnout gear. We've received that now. Also, the emergency operations grant. We have received, or if not, will be very shortly, the total funds of the amount of $30,000 for another grant applied for. So that through Mr. Smith, I believe. Thank you for that. And from the Regional District of Nanaimo, legislative reform initiative. I hope we had the opportunity to read through that. I don't know if anybody wants to offer comment or opinion on that letter. None. Oh, Councillor Fowler.
Sorry, I'm supposed to say first and then turn the line up. Yes, I like the way their letter was written. I like the words, the work that they've done, the steps that they've done. They've identified the next steps and also identified that this isn't something to be done off the side of somebody's desk. It's going to be a big job. So hearing back from UBCM in the next steps, it's they talk about that the summarizing the session will be distributed to UBCM members. So if UBCM takes on the task of doing this, that's about the only way we can see it happening.
Thank you, Councillor Fowler. Was there any new business to move forward? Hearing none, we will be moving to an in-camera session. So I will call this meeting, or to look for a motion to have this meeting adjourned at 6:36 p.m. Thank you, Councillor Todd. Second from Councillor Wayner. And this meeting. Oh, sorry. I've been corrected. So we're going to close the regular meeting, and I need somebody to support a motion. This is council move to an in-camera meeting pursuant to the community charter, section 90, subsection 1G, litigation or potential litigation affecting the municipality. Also section K, the proposed provision under a municipal service that are their preliminary services, or sorry, at their preliminary stages, and that the view of the council could be reasonably expected to harm the interest of the municipality if they were discussed in public. And also section I, discussions with municipal officers and employees respecting municipal objectives, measures, and progress reports for the purposes of preparing an annual report under section 98 of the annual municipal report. Going back to our adjournment, thank you, Councillor Wayner and Councillor Todd. All those in favor? And we are now adjourned at 6:37. Thank you.